Every moment in life has the potential to be phenomenal. At Amy Boyle Photography, we specialize in capturing those moments, whether it's for your business, a milestone event, or a personal portrait. As the host of the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, I know the power of storytelling, and I bring that same passion to my photography. Let's create images that celebrate who you are and what you stand for. Visit amyboylephotography.com to schedule your session today. Welcome to the Speaking Phenomenal podcast. I'm your host, Amy Boyle. Have you ever felt the urge to reinvent yourself, but wondered if it was too late? What if I told you at 60, today's guest discovered an entirely new way to express herself through poetry? Jacqueline Jack Perez, founder of Cool Life, returns to the show to talk about the power of reinvention, finding creative courage, and why midlife is just the beginning. This is the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast. Welcome back to the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, Jack. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so excited to be here. I can't believe it's been 5 years. It's insane how quickly the time flies.
We initially met through Clubhouse, which, gone are the days of that, and on to new and different platforms. So glad that we've stayed connected, and I can't wait for you to reintroduce your phenomenal self to my listeners.
So my name is Jacqueline Perez, but I go by Jack, and I am an entrepreneur. Currently, I run a platform called Cool Life, which I believe is what we talked about the first time, Amy, that we got together. And Cool Life is a digital platform, a repository that's dedicated to normalizing aging, specifically for women. And how we do this, Amy, is via curated, relevant content. So I probably have had over maybe 120 thought leaders by now provide their expertise and wisdom to our community. But at any one given time, we have over 65 thought leaders, each in their own lane, meaning there's so many opportunities and challenges that present themselves at this stage of life. And we need help navigating these changes that happen. And they start for a lot of us with the physiological changes, right? That's the menopausal changes. Some of us, that's when we first kind of wake up to, oh, crud, everything is changing. But we would be naive to think that it's only physiological changes that women face. We face structural changes in our family. If for whatever reason you decided to have a kid, or you didn't want one, or you did, but you ended up with one and you did it, chances are you're probably transitioning out of full-time parenting. That can be really tough for some people. It threw me under a bus and I didn't even realize it at the time. But there's, other things. What the most divorces, Amy, are handed out by women after 50. What do you do after that? So you start dating? Well, how do you date with a dry vagina? There's so many things that women have to consider. Also, let's just say you have a teen, right? Because a lot of women, if you started having children later in life, you might have a teen. Well, you also might be responsible for taking care of your elderly parents at the same time. It is not unusual for a woman to, realize that their teenager has stolen their car at 3:00 in the morning, only to get a phone call from the assisted living facility a few hours later that your mom fell down and broke a hip. It's a lot. We have a lot to deal with, and I didn't want women to do it alone. That is why I built the platform, so that I could bring the resources from around the world, ladies, women who are already helping us in these lanes. And so now they're providing their wisdom, their expertise, their life hacks to the Cool Life community regularly, which I am grateful for.
It's just such an asset to have a platform like that for women to connect. And it's incredible that you've put that together. How many years has that been going on for you now?
The idea came to myself and a friend of mine, because I had a partner originally who passed away from colon cancer, sadly, shortly after we launched, actually. So she's been gone for a while. But if you think about when we came up with the idea 7.5 years ago, but it took us a good year to figure it out, right? 7 years ago, there was hardly anything available, Amy, on the internet. But if you think about how much it has changed, we now see ads for menopause products on the television. That wasn't there 7 years ago, but we still have a lot. We still have a lot to change. We still need to move the needle even further, if you ask me, but we're getting there.
I'm so glad that you have this platform and that it continues to grow, because it's one of those things that it takes the momentum of many of us to keep the needle moving in this space. And I want to bring up your new foray into poetry. So you've always been a writer, or a writer for a long time. Tell us a little bit more about what you previously have done as a essayist and now as a poetry.
Yeah, it's crazy. Amy, I have been writing under the umbrella Jack Smack for years. And honestly, if you go out and you type in Jack Smack on the internet, you would get hundreds of essays. And I write a lot about the midlife experience for women, very tongue-in-cheek, self-deprecating. I make it funny, but I also make it relevant and poignant, and I make a point. Remember how I mentioned the whole empty nest potential? Like if you had a kid and what happened is mine went away, right? Because he's now going to be 23. So he went away a few years ago. Boy, oh boy, I had no idea. I was not a mom, Amy, that you would have said, oh, she completely defines herself as being Aiden's mother. Oh, that's all she talks about. She leads with that. As a matter of fact, I've had people say to me, oh gosh, I wouldn't even know you were a mother until you talk to you for a little bit, until you're into the conversation. It surprised me how hard not actively parenting anymore, what that did to me. It made it, I think I forgot who I was for a little bit. I forgot who I was. I didn't have to there was no more, did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Did you, where are the car keys, Mom? Where are the car keys? Whatever that is, whatever it is that you're parenting, all of that stopped. And I had a really hard time. And I went into this sort of deep depression over several years. And then I lost a really good relationship with a female friend that, I didn't realize you could break up at this stage in life with women friends, but that dissolved, and that was really crushing. My baby sister, who I have lived next to, we had our babies 10 days apart on purpose. She upped and moved to California when I'm on the East Coast. She left me, and all of this just put me in such a depressive mode for a couple of years. Finally, I just found myself in a closet at 3:00 in the morning writing poetry. And then I thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the focus. I'm going to focus on the poetry writing. And I made it a challenge. I said, I'm going to write one piece of poetry every day for 30 straight days, and I'm going to see what happens. And this is what happened. I ended up with a book.
Was it a specific theme, or how did each day come to you when it came to these poems that you were writing?
God, that is such a good question. So I didn't start off with a theme. I didn't start off with an outline. I just poured out whatever it was that was weighing on me. Well, here's the deal though, Amy. I happen to be a woman in midlife. So guess what? The poems are about women in midlife, which turns out is not just me. There's a bunch of us. And what I realized afterwards when I was sharing the poetry, other women were like, oh my God, this is exactly how I feel. How did you get in my head? And I didn't do that intentionally, but it turns out I'm not that unique or that special, that I too am feeling much of the same things that other women are feeling. All I did was made it rhyme.
I feel that a lot of us, we're just hesitant to start something new. So that first poem led to 29 more days after that. How did you find the courage to keep going? What gave you the charge to go, I'm just going to go for this. And this is going to be this is the way I'm going to express myself for the next month.
I wish I could tell you that it was like a logical or a frontal lobe activity. Literally, I've heard people say before that something went through them, that they channeled something. And I hear it and I'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but okay. I now know what that means. I was the conduit. It was going through me. I literally feel like I had no choice. And I'm using air quotes because I do believe we always have choice. We have agency, we have choice. But at the time, I was so compelled and driven that it felt that I didn't have a choice, if that makes any sense at all.
When those whispers become like yelling or big bells clanging, we can't ignore them. But one of the things I think that's super cool about the book is that you included QR codes so that you could hear you reading. What was kind of the impetus behind that?
I'm an actor. Like originally, I went to theater school. That's what I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be a Broadway actor. And then about halfway through my first year of theater school, I'm like, wow, this is a lot of work to become a waitress. So I went to business school instead, but I always have enjoyed performing and reading in front of people. And someone said to me, Jack, why don't you read them? Because I love hearing it in your voice. It was suggested by a friend of mine. So I got into my closet and I recorded it I recorded one on my iPhone and I put it out on TikTok or whatever. I put it out just to see what would happen. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, that is so awesome. Then I thought to myself, well, why not make the book interactive? I recorded each poem. So I didn't record like the whole book. It's not an audio book per se, because there's prose in here. I have little blurbs explaining, why I wrote the poem or what the meaning is behind the poem to give people a little more context. So I didn't read that stuff, but each poem has a QR code on the page. So you can, if you want, while you're reading it, click on it and have me read it to you in your own head while you're reading it in the book. And I thought that might be kind of fun as an interactive, different. I haven't seen anyone do that yet, but I mean, maybe it's done and I didn't know, but I think I invented it. So
I tend to be the kind of person that checks out the books from the library, but also has to get the audio version as well. So I like to do both, and it helps me stay more present. And I also love it when the author reads it because then you hear their tone and inflection, the way they meant it. And so I think in this sense that would be really an emotional way to connect with you, to hear you through your own words and voice as well.
I hope so. I think it's that QR code sort of feature or whatever you want to call it seems to be resonating really well with women. They really like having the option, and it's also it gives it an element of fun. Also, it's a little different, just makes it a little different of an experience. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Well, I know we've talked about a couple different poems that you might consider reading to the audience today. Do you have any one that jumps out at you to share?
Yes, I want to share one that I think, well, I believe resonates with almost every woman I know, because it's about body image issues. And I don't know a woman alive who at some point in time has not dealt with some sort of body dysmorphia perspective. And so this is called Unleashing the Past. I do have to make one little caveat just in case your audience is super young. There is a reference here to a model named Twiggy that was very famous when I was little. And she was known for being really, really thin. I mean, well, her name, Twiggy. So that's the only caveat I want to make, because if not, it might not be understood. Unleashing the past. In a world that worshipped slender frames, Twiggy's waifish grace her delicate flames. I stood apart, though silently resigned to feast on leaves for my behind. Watch your weight, the whispers cooed, a lifetime served in bowls of food. The salad, harmless in its art, yet weighed so heavily on my heart. For every bite was laced with guilt, a quiet penance, a fortress built. To chase a form not mine to hold, a dream of thin, elusive, cold. 1,000 leaves consumed in vain, I ponder now through age and pain. At 60 years, I stand anew, no longer bound by what I chew. The salad, once a faithful friend, now signals something I transcend. No more the hunger for perfection's plea, but a fuller, truer love of me.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, who knew a salad could be so, I don't know, tick me off? Salads tick me off now.
I see that. Yeah, the 1,000 leaves and oh my gosh, right?
Consumed in vain. The thing is, like, I could not be a thin. I mean, I'm of Hispanic descent. I'm Latin America. Most of us are not built that way. We're just not. And so I wanted to be something I couldn't be when I was younger. I wanted to be the Farrah Fawcett. I wanted to be the Twiggy, and that was never going to be me. And now I realize I like me just the way I am. Thank you very much. And I do not have to eat any more salads if I don't want them.
Yes, we need to eat what nourishes us, sustains us, but not to become something that we are not. There's so much of that in advertising and everyday messaging, and it's good to stop and see that we can just love ourselves for who we are.
I'm hoping that that's what women hear when they hear this poem. And honestly, all the poems, the other 29 poems, it is literally about loving yourself and being okay with the transitions and the changes, because this is a really tumultuous time for women. It can be.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey there, Phenomenal listeners. It's Amy Boyle. If you're loving the stories and insights on the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods. Your 5-star reviews help us reach even more people and keep bringing you great content. Thank you so much for your support and being a part of our phenomenal community. Now back to the show.
With the Cool Life community, have there been poets in the group before, or anybody? And you obviously have other writers and things. Is this something that now maybe might have another segment to bring more artists in play? Or
What a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that, but I think you just planted a seed. It's interesting because I have been doing a lot of live poetry readings and heading into that community more and more, which I had never been a part of before. There's a lot of poets out there. I had no idea. It's getting a little bit of a resurgence. That's what I'm being told. I don't know, but I'm brand new to it. But yeah, I would love to have more more artistry as part of the Cool Life community. That would be so wonderful.
I feel like as we're learning new things about ourselves or being bold enough to try new things, this is a good opportunity to use voices for ourselves that maybe we didn't realize we had. And even if it's to dabble or to practice, but to have a safe place to share with one another might be a really cool, like a poetry slam with Cool Life or something like that.
That would be fun. I should look into that. Yeah, that would be so much fun.
One thing that I always love to ask my guests is, what is being phenomenal mean to you?
It's a great question. I think phenomenal means to me that I'm living with integrity, like that I'm comfortable, that I'm happy and satisfied with the decisions I'm making, the choices I'm making. Because by definition, whenever we decide on one thing, we're literally deciding against something else because you can't do everything. And so when we choose or select something, whether it's an activity, a way to be, a thought, you're literally making it so something else cannot take that place. And so for me, being phenomenal is working at not 100%, because that's just crazy talk, but holy cow, if I could get me to be in a good space mentally 75% or above of the time, I feel like I'm pretty phenomenal. And that sometimes means literally real time replacing a negative dance that's going on in my head, right? Because my brain, my reptilian brain, like all of ours, loves to find all the reasons that bad stuff's going to happen to me, right? I mean, boy, oh boy, my brain is so good at that. I have been working on, okay, let's change that channel. Let's change that conversation. I can do that. I can literally change the words in my own head. So if I can catch myself at least 75% of the time, I feel like I'm doing pretty phenomenally.
And that's something that we need to remember. It isn't an all or nothing thing. It's not 100%. My goodness, anything over 50% is doing really darn good. Anything over 30% some days, I'll take it, right? It's giving ourselves that progress is better than perfection. And I don't think we praise that enough.
Well, because perfection isn't available. And so if you're going to wait for that, or if that's your true measurement, you will never be okay. It will never happen. And so waiting for that or expecting that, I don't know. It's pointless, I think, to do that, for anyone to do that to themselves, because you're never going to achieve it. And so you're just going to spend your entire life striving towards something that you will never get to, versus take the wins when you can get them. If you've changed a bad thought to a positive thought while you're doing the dishes, holy cow, have a party. Do you know how hard that is to do? Do you know how hard that is to do while you're washing a dish? The bad thought comes in and it like runs you down the playing field. If you can stop it, if you can cut it off halfway down the playing field and change it to something positive, you can go take a nap. You
Gold star for you. Definitely.
You won the day. As far as I'm concerned, you won the day.
That's something that definitely needs to be celebrated on the more regular basis. When it comes to finding your new book and learning more about you, where can our guests know and see and find and purchase and all that sort of good stuff?
You can find me on Cool Life. I'm always out there. So that's spelled cattywampus. It's not like the normal spelling of cool. It's spelled with a K. So it's Kuel life. And yes, it's actually in the Urban Dictionary. It is a synonym for the word cool, normally spelled Cool. The book is out there, but you can also just go to the book site, which is therealjacksmack.com. But either one, you can find the book on Cool Life. It'll take you to therealjacksmack.com. And you can get the digital copy. It does still have the QR codes on my site for only $2.99. The paperback, which some people like a real book, and I kind of like a real book as well, but the paperback's only $12. It's not like it's gonna. I don't believe it takes a lot of thinking or planning to buy the book. It's only 30 poems. You don't have to read it from cover to cover. You can read it, however you want, because it's laid out in different chapters. So you could go to an area that you're feeling like you want to hear about, whether it's parenting an adult child, or if you lost a family pet, because, let's say you got your kid a dog or a kitty cat when they were young, and now your kid's off at college, there's a high likelihood you might be dealing with the demise of your family pet. And that's not fun either. So I think there's like a poem for quite a few different feelings, the midlife women feels from what I'm hearing. So.
Well, that will definitely all be linked in the show notes, and I can't wait for more people to connect with you and to learn more about the great community that you serve and put together weekly, right, as well. You have like a weekly drop of all sorts of great articles and ideas and events and things that are going on. And I just can't thank you enough for being here today.
Amy, thank you. The pleasure was all mine. I really appreciate you putting me in front of your world. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Is there one last poem that you would like to leave us with today?
I have a poem about change. I'm a huge change person. I'm a novelty seeker. So I wrote a poem. Actually, I had just got back from Istanbul. I had been in Turkey for a month, and I was hanging with a friend of mine in her apartment in New York City, in Manhattan. And I was doing her dishes. And this is what came to me. The reason it's called Soaking in Change is because I was in soapy water. A seeker, born with heart untamed, I chase the new, the unclaimed, each moment fresh, a fleeting breeze that gently shapes with subtle ease. Most pass like whispers, soft and light, a touch, a taste, then out of sight. But some, like shadows, long remain, a tender scar, a trace of pain. Yet there I stood with soapy hands in a new space where change commands. Upper West Side with weathered charm, I smiled, embraced the soothing calm. For there, mid-suds, the world seemed clear, the past dissolved, no longer near. I felt the pull of life anew each time I travel. I break through. The ease with which I blend and start to build again, to mend my heart. Each place I go, the world rewrites, and joy returns with softened light. So here's to change, both sharp and sweet, to every path, to every street. For even when the marks run deep, new worlds will wake me from my sleep.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Amy.
Well, great. We'll leave on a note of change, and may that take you where it will.
Yes.
And like I said, I'll have everything linked in the show notes. And again, my thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Speaking of Phenomenal. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and even share the podcast, as well as stay tuned for more inspiring conversations. Remember, each and every one of you is capable of extraordinary things. Until next time, take care and remember, you are phenomenal.